How's it going?
Pretty good. Oh, Rob, how's it going?
How you doing?
Good. Good. Schmagging
Burnout,
here.
I understand.
I can't see it in my right eye. I'm like, what is this? Like, what? Like, it hasn't been that bad of a day yet. My
That's
right
good.
eye is blowing totally out of its socket. Like, geez, not yet. God. Actually, the light is terrible where I've just moved my desk, just reorganizing some stuff in a few rooms, and so I'm in this very low light area. So it's not bad for a very chill vibe, but yeah, I think my eyes are going a little bit crazy with the. I'm always adjusting the screen brightness and all this stuff. So probably is my right eye blowing out. I think.
I mean, you got a kind of nice hue going on. Like on one
Right,
side, you got this like red, and the other side, a little blue. So it's
right,
you know,
yeah, yeah. I did try to balance the colors, right? I guess I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out the design sense if there is anything in this dungeon that I'm in. There can be design in a dungeon, right? Design sense. You can
yeah, fair enough.
make
Fair
them
enough.
nice.
All right, I'm gonna share my
Signing in.
screen here. Alrighty. So, what Rory and I wanted to cover today is we want to kick off sort of the second half of the portfolio course. This course is a bit different, I would say, than like the typical course that I tend to teach, right? This one's a little bit more, we have like the occasional check-ins, right? But we're not meeting every single week. And it's a little bit more, you have sort of these like modules that you're sort of completing as you go, right? So, as of today, you should have completed 4 out of the 8 assignments and essentially be completed sort of those modules and be ready to sort of for the second half. And really the focus from now into the remaining weeks is really sort of working on getting your actual portfolio URL up, right? So www.u.com or .design or whatever it is. And then that was going to lead into industry reviews. So we have a list of people from industry. A lot of them are like previous grads from the programs or people that we've taught or we know. They all want to be doing this. So really it's a good opportunity for you to go and meet with them and pick their brain for, I believe they're like half an hour meetings. So you get a fair amount of time with them. And there's a whole bunch of different people that do all sorts of different stuff. So some of the things you maybe want to find out are like, what do they do in their day-to-day job, right? What's their job title and things like that. Also just to get you to review your work. So, and so some other things we'll go through is the next 2 assignments you've got, creating a website, and also just sort of some of the midterm grading things. Okay. So don't have a ton of interactivity this week like other weeks, but just a couple little things. So we'll just do a little check-in because I know you had reading week. That doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't doing a lot of work during that time. I know at least specifically for the MMDD students, they have 2 9-week courses, so that they're probably really in the crunch for that one. But also you're sort of for most of you, we're basically have like your second half of your semester, and you're basically almost done school. So, well, for at least school for now. I'm tired, dying alive, strange, weird.
Tired is gonna it's neat. It's sort of on its back.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I do think a couple things to hopefully look forward to is it's getting lighter out. It's getting warmer.
Yeah, right.
You're in Toronto, right? Like those are my
Totally.
like little wins I go for,
That's it.
right?
That's totally it. Yeah, we've noticed it like every day here, and you're like, all right. And of course the clocks, next week are like, okay, we'll lose just a bit, but we're still gaining. It's good.
Yeah. I'm just hoping for no more snow. This is, I don't know, definitely I think this has been like a too much snow thing.
Yep.
All right. So tired, weird, exhausted, strange.
Tired. Big one. Almost there. That's a good one. There we go. Yep. It's true. It's always the deal.
All right. So, all right, let's. Okay, so this is another little follow-up one. So, have you started to network with industry? This is more like I know we've talked about this previously, but this is sort of a I think, a chance for us to, Rory and I, to bug you again, right? So if you're not, like, please start doing it. You know, you don't have to have everything sorted out right now. I was actually talking to a student the other day, and they secured a full-time job, and they actually put together a PDF presentation, and that's how they got their job. They didn't need to have their portfolio website. And I'm not lying just for the sake of telling you a story. This is a real story of an MMD student right now. What they actually did was they catered their PDF towards the company that they were going to go and work for, and they showed off their work, but they also kind of positioned as to, like, hey, why I'd be a good fit for your company. It was really, really good.
Wow,
so
it's great to hear.
Yeah. So if you are super stressed too, another thing to think about is in terms of your mental health, Humber does have resources available to you. I know also with various, you know, with what's going on in the world right now, that with, you know, if your background is either Russian or Ukrainian, right, or you know individuals there, that is some, there are resources available to you that I know that the school should have sent you things. If not, you can always reach out to myself. I can point you in the direction for resources. Humber has, as a Humber student, you have access to either like same day or almost like next day, like services where you can go and just like talk to somebody. So, okay, but that is, Humber has available sources. If you look at the Humber We Got You. So.
Yeah, Mark Karam actually, he sent a message. I haven't been able to check all of it. I think I just saw it today, but I believe it touched on a little bit of that. You probably got it as well, Robert. But yeah, I just noticed that come out today. My coordinator there from the graphic design program. So yeah, I think there's a lot of outreach there in that regard.
Yeah. So I think this is also just start doing stuff, right? Just try and commit a couple hours a week. I know everyone's busy, but just is a really important thing. And one of the things we're going to do for the next live session that we meet, we're actually going to sort of talk about sort of how like a networking thing actually worked well. So we're actually going to bring Bianca, who used to be the PC of the GDES program, who's now working at HelloFresh. And so she's working there. She got her job through networking. And then also she hired somebody who was actually a previous GDES student. And that was also sort of through like networking and things like that. So, okay. So one thing we just wanted to check in and sort of give you a reminder. Well, I think I just cut it for a second. I'm back. Assignments in this course are sat unsat. So grade or mark, you either get 100% or a 0. So 100% is a sat and everything's good. A 0 basically means that you can still redo the assignment and you can submit it again, but you do need to get a sat on every single assignment in order to pass the course. So if you do get a 0, I'm going to go through some scenarios in a bit just to sort of identify and flag some things, but Rory and I will give you feedback as to what was potentially missing. So some common things might be if you submitted a portfolio review form and there wasn't an official like digital signature on it, then you need to resubmit, or it doesn't even have a signature, you need to get that. But we will provide you feedback as to what was missing in order to get a SAT. So I know that Blackboard has updated and changed. I've spent a fair amount of time trying to go in with, I can create a test student, and I've sort of gone in and looked at my test student and tried to submit things, give myself feedback to sort of ensure that things are working the way that I think they are. So if you do submit something, we can give you feedback. So the second thing, and the second important thing, is you must get a SAT on all assignments. So there's 8 assignments in the course. You need to get 100% on all 8 assignments. Okay, you can't do 6 out of 8. You have to do all 100. The reason being, when we reviewed some of our courses, this was a course that we determined that we want you to have every single thing. So you can't sort of, so for instance, you can't not graduate the program without a website, right? So we think that all the things here are really important, that we need you to do them all. So this is where you need to complete all the assignments. You technically can take, you can keep resubmitting, and you have until sort of like the last day of class to technically hand stuff in. So you have like unlimited attempts at something. So if you do something and you need a couple times to do it, then you can do that. So that's a bit different. But you do need to have a 100% or a SAT on all assignments. So that's the second important thing. So then, yeah, assignments can be resubmitted for unlimited times, right? So if you do get a 0, you'll have a piece of feedback that should inform you as to why you got a 0, and then you can resubmit in order to get a SAT. Okay. So the next thing that's really important too is that all assignments require a submission, right? So if you go and, so for instance, say like the faculty meeting with, say you met with Rory, you need to fill out a review form that sort of documents, here's what took place during the meeting, here's the feedback I got from Rory, and here are my next steps. You then need to make sure to send that to Rory, and he'll sign that and return it to you, and then that's what you submit. So it's important that for all of the 8 assignments in the course, you do submit something to Blackboard, okay? And that also affects some things that I'm going to talk about in a minute, with just in terms of grading and giving feedback. And then just the last thing, that the portfolio review forms need to be digitally signed by the reviewer. If you don't have a digital signature, it's pretty easy to do. When you click on the PDF, it'll basically take about 2-3 steps. You can set up a digital signature. But this is sort of a way of us tracking, especially once we start going to, we've got like 40 industry people. Their signature, like their actual digital signature, is our way of verifying that the meeting took place, because we're also paying them as well. So it's important that we want to be able to verify that the meetings took place, and having the digital signature is the best way of doing that. We don't want to have to reach out to everybody being like, hey, did this take place, and stuff like that. Okay, so another thing I'm going to point out is I don't know whether you've been receiving messages from, say, either the college about the current labor negotiations between the college union and the administration. But as of right now, I believe that anyone that is either like a full-time person like myself, or somebody that is a non-full-time, they're considered non-full-time or not individual, they are not supposed to be giving midterm marks through my Humber. So that's just something that the union has asked people to do. So you might not be receiving a midterm mark on my Humber, but you can still get your grades in Blackboard. Okay, I know at least with the courses that in this course we still have your grades in Blackboard. So it's just important to sort of flag that and go and have a look at those things. Okay. I'll take some questions at the end of this in a second if there are some. I'm just going to go through a couple of scenarios. So right now, so a couple of things I've noticed is with sort of the update to Blackboard Ultra, there's a couple of little differences with grading and sort of like how you access your marks and you see stuff. So as mentioned, I went through and I tried to submit some work and give myself feedback to ensure that essentially what we want is that you always sort of know where you stand in the course, right? If you go in, you log into Blackboard, you should be able to know, have you submitted something? What was your grade on it? What was the feedback that you received? Right now, in a sort of like a best case scenario, right, all assignments need a grade of 100% to pass the course. Right, so if you go, when you log into your Blackboard, if you click on the gradebook tab, it should show you all of the assignments, and it should show you the due date. It should show you if it's been graded or not, and it also should show you your grade. So this is where your first step, where you can find out, did I get 100% or did I get a 0? And all of these grades affect your final, whatever shows up as your current grade. Okay, so essentially your current grade, I believe it should either be it should be 100%, right? If you hand in everything and everything's been marked and given back to you, it should be 100% in the course, okay, or a SAT. If it's not, it means that there's some sort of something that has not been marked. So let's look at sort of a second case scenario. Okay, so there's a little thing though that's a little bit that's important to check as well. Your current grade is calculated on things that you've actually submitted and have been graded. So in this case scenario right here, you'll see that I have a current grade of 100%, but I only have submitted 1 mark, okay, where I only have submitted 1 assignment and it's been graded and returned. Okay, so 4 or 5 out of there's a bunch of assignments here that have not been submitted or graded. So it's important for you to always be aware that you are required to submit your assignments. Okay, I'll talk about some next steps and things that Rory and I are going to do to ensure that everybody is on the same page as where you stand. Okay, but we wanted to do this during the live session rather than sort of do it ahead of time. We just wanted to sort of walk everybody through this process so everybody's clear as to what's going on. Okay, so just another thing to check is if your grade shows up as you're getting 100% in the class, double check that you have submitted all of your assignments and they've all been graded. Okay, Rory and I will definitely keep on the grading mill. There's always stuff to keep grading, and that's one of the fun things that Rory and I get to do, right?
Yep, constant work, constant coming in. It's pretty easy. It's easier than I thought. It's Blackboard's not bad at letting you see everything for sure. As long as you're
yeah, and this one's a little bit different. So sometimes we're not giving feedback on certain things if you've sort of done, like if there's a submission where you've sort of done the work, it sort of will give you the mark in an effort to sort of get things back to you fast. Because in terms of getting feedback on your work, you're going to get a lot of feedback during your one-on-one reviews with people. So that's essentially where you're going to get a lot of your feedback in terms of, say, like how to make your work better and things like that. Okay, so next scenario. So if your current grade shows as it's not 100%, okay, you will hopefully be able to see that here's an assignment. So for me, assignment number 4, I got a 0 out of 100, and there's also a little feedback button which you should be able to click on, and it should show you the feedback as to what was missing in the submission and what you need to do to fix it in order to get 100%. Okay. So there's another little thing that's going on right now. So with the old Blackboard, if we were to manually enter a 0, we could also give you feedback that would say like no submission or something like that would indicate why you got a 0. What I've noticed, at least with my current understanding with how Blackboard's working, with the latest one is if we manually enter a mark, and you didn't submit anything for grading, we can't actually give you feedback. Like we can't actually write in a little feedback box saying, oh, you didn't submit this. So what might happen, and what Rory and I are going to do, and this is sort of the next one, is we're going to go through, and I'll do this tomorrow. We'll go and sort of update all of the grades for all of like the first 3 assignments, because they are all technically past due. I think the 4th one is now due this week, right? We're going to go in and we're going to basically assign grades to every single thing. So what that'll do is I think it'll trigger to everybody either you didn't hand something in, but it should give you an indication of what's missing and what you need to do, okay? I think that's my next slide. Yeah. So really but we wanted to sort of explain this to you, because what might happen in some cases, if you haven't submitted anything and you get a 0, we can't really give you feedback saying as to why you got the 0, but it's essentially that you didn't submit it yet. Okay, you can still submit it, that's okay. But this is sort of a way for us to sort of trigger that to you to sort of to indicate that we haven't received this piece of content from you, and please submit it to us. Okay, so this time I just wanted to ask, are there any questions about sort of the whole midterm, the grades, just for the course? Well, I want to ask this now, right, because it's week 8, so now is a good time for us to ask and ensure that everybody knows that we're all clear, right? Because what I don't want to get to is week 14, and you're like, oh, wait, okay?
Whoa, yeah. This is the best time for sure.
Okay, because Rory and I are not trying to ever like deceive or hide anything, right? But sometimes I would say, sometimes you post something like, oh yeah, that's totally clear, everybody saw it, right? And then they're like, oh no, they didn't get it. So this is where it's sort of a good time to identify and deal with everybody.
Exactly, trying to keep pace with like what Blackboard kind of does automatically, right? With just kind of its default, what it throws out to people based on what we input into it. So yeah.
Okay, any questions? I think you should be able to ask through the Menti if you want. I saw that nobody in the chat window, didn't seem like there's anybody yet.
No questions is good.
Okay, so Just so in terms of next steps, just so we're clear, right? Rory and I are going to go, we're going to assign a grade. No, this course is 14 weeks long.
Oh,
But the majority,
yeah,
but weeks, the final weeks of the class are essentially, you have a month to do 2 reviews with industry people. So it is, so for MMDD students, when your program is a little bit more front, or this semester is a little bit more, it's a 9-week, it's a little bit more front loaded. The workload is a little bit heavier in sort of the front part, leading into sort of, I would say, once you get your portfolio site coded, it's now basically just sort of reviewing with people.
Yeah,
Okay,
I guess
so
the graphic design students are, yeah, definitely more of a wide, kind of, they've got their, projects, right?
yeah, GDES is a
Individual
14-week
projects.
semester that will
Yeah,
shift
yeah.
eventually to a 9-week, but you don't have to worry about that because that's not going to be. So assignment 5 and 6 are due, when is it? The 24th? They're due the 24th. And then whatever week 14 is, which I think is like April 14th or something like that. You have to submit 2 industry reviews. So that's essentially booking 2 meetings with people to review your work. And I think the other one is participation in the grad show. So that's essentially, we'll be submitting like a profile and a URL to your website. It's pretty straightforward. So there's not a ton of work coming up, and that's understanding that I would say, specifically I would say more like MMDD folks, is that a lot of people are starting field placements. So our semester doesn't really have a more of a staggered exit, right? Depending on when you secure your placement. GDES, you have like 14 weeks and then you start later, but this is also one of those things that we're in a couple of years from now, GDES is going to be a 9-week semester like MMDD. So. But you don't need to worry about that because you're probably not going to be here in 3 or 4 years. So, okay, cool. Let's move on to next one. Okay, so your next 2 assignments are for the 24th, right? So number 5 is your portfolio URL, right? So this is an online portfolio of your work. So as mentioned before, you can code it if you want. You can use Webflow, you can use Squarespace, you can use Adobe Portfolio, you can use whatever you want. Essentially, we just want to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward with your work and who you are and what you can do. So I believe this is probably something that we've identified when you met one-on-one with Rory and myself, and we mentioned this before, but it's important that you don't have to code. Do whatever is going to make the most sense for you. So just in terms of some direction, right, your website should clearly identify who you are, what your role is, show at least 3 to 5 pieces of work with information about each project, a short bio, and a contact page. So what you're going to submit to Blackboard is a URL, and when we go to the URL, Rory and I are going to check to see that it's working, that you have the required elements, and then that is a SAT. But then that's what you can then use to, when you're, I would say, when you're meeting, say, with the industry mentors who are going to be the next people, or potentially with your faculty member, use your website and review stuff on your website. Okay, so that's due Thursday, March 24th at 11:59, and you just want to submit the URL. Cool. And then your assignment. Everybody needs to be a good portfolio site. So in terms of what to use, I think it'll be
domain.
So, Rory.
Oh, like the actual engine. Oh God. What Rob said, it's, yeah, honestly, that's the best advice, period. It really, like, so much of it, as you guys are probably finding out right now, and we're finding it with you, it's so much of it is about readiness, right? I mean, it was the contact of mine I was speaking to, but for a portfolio example, actually, who I know, we were trading stories actually about that, and how she is a professional for working for years, is always feeling like, gee, things aren't ready or whatever. So whatever really gets you there, and again, like what Rob mentioned, in a semblance that reflects things as best as possible for the type of work that you have. And that's the thing, it's iterative, right? Your portfolio, like, you want to get it to a decent spot, and then where you need it to, and then move on from there. So yeah, it's basically along those lines. It's kind of what I'd offer.
So just in terms of one of the things that we have put here, right? So there's a door portfolio. I might recommend, I don't know, I have heard a lot of good things about Webflow.
It's great. Yeah,
And
it's a very good.
the other thing that a colleague of ours, Greg Goralski, sent me today is you can get a year free of hosting from Webflow. So as a student, you basically get a free year of web hosting. So, you know, and also there is this Webflow University, which is basically a free online course to how to sort of build your own. You know, Rory, what are you using as an engine for yours?
I'm not using Webflow, but I did most of that course actually last year in between, you know, in between a whole pile of projects and kind of getting my portfolio a little more spruced up for all the freelance stuff I'm doing. I can say flat out from doing most of that course, not finishing it, it's fantastic. Poking around as well, I personally see it as a front end answer to anything that WordPress could do, to be, you know, brutally honest. It's beautiful to work in. A little bit more of a learning curve, of course, than let's say one of the portfolio engines, which is you know, super easy. But yeah, it's great. Yeah, for sure. And if you get a year free, I would say that would be, if I were in your shoes, I would be jumping at that. And just trying to work within that anyway, and seeing how it works as a tool, because it's worked with a few digital teams as well that work within it. So I think it's a tool that's sort of good to learn how to use. And if you can use it on your own project without as much risk attached to it, right, as opposed to a client project in the future, that's great. It's another tool that you'll know how to use from getting your portfolio up on there, or at least you know, attempting to.
Yeah, I think it allows for a little bit more customization too, right? So I think
yes,
some of the other services, right, that are available, I don't think they enable, like, you're kind of sometimes get stuck in whatever the template allows you to do.
Yes, exactly.
And I know as designers, that's always one of the things, like, but I want to do it differently. I want to do it my way, right? And that's always something people fight with. So I think Webflow does allow. I mean, it might be a little bit more of a learning curve, but I think as Rory mentioned, right, there's another skill you can add, right? When you go and you're talking to somebody about, like, you know, making a small website, right? Like, Webflow is a really good option of something that's quite new, you know, and comparing it to, you know, what some of the other services are. So I actually know program doesn't exist anymore, but I think I put her portfolio up a couple of weeks ago. But there's a student named Ariana, and she was really good at designing and coding, but she kind of got to this thing where she was like, I don't really want to code anymore because I don't love it. And she's really become this advocate for Webflow. For just, and she, so, but,
interesting.
You know, and she was really able to code very well, but she just was like, no, I like Webflow. So.
Wow, that's like kind of the proof point right there, right? Coming from a coding perspective, like I know a lot of developers, friends of mine, that, you know, it's just they want to live in that space, but seeing it myself and not knowing how to code at all, you can see where it's a perfect middle ground for, you know, the designer and someone that knows how to code, and sort of meeting in the middle. Yeah.
So yes, so then the question too is, if you were planning on doing like front end developer coding work, then yeah, you want to code your own site.
Yeah, that's one of your skills for sure. Yeah, that's a given.
Yeah, because if I go inspect Element and I see that you're using like a Squarespace template, then I'm gonna say, well, you're not really a front end developer.
Yeah, if you've hacked it somehow, you've gone and hacked Squarespace.
I had that actually happened a couple of years ago. Somebody sent me their portfolio, and they you know, their title was like front end developer, and then I inspected Element and it was a template, and it was kind of like, you know, if I was able to find this, right, like, you know, just so no. There's a question about, should the bio be a case study? I think your bio doesn't have to be very long, right? I think if you look at, we're going to show some samples today. I think just really short to the point, right? I mean, if you have an introduction on your website, that's really only like a couple sentences or one or two, right? Your bio might be like a paragraph or two, right? You don't have to tell us your entire story, but if you look at like Rory's site, Rory's got what 2 paragraphs, but there's a lot of
mine's a little bit long. yeah.
There's some things in there, right? Like you're a hip hop enthusiast, right? So it alludes to kind of like some fun things about Rory, right? So
I'm always looking at it and thinking, God, I could cut it back. And again, like Rob mentioned, there's a few examples that kind of go everywhere, really short and quite long. So yeah.
Rory, can you pop your URL in the chat window?
Yeah, sure. Yep. Let's see if I can go to that about me.
Oh, we're gonna come up to that in a sec. we will we're going to review some of this stuff. Okay, so number 5 is your portfolio review. Number 6 is you're just going to do a portfolio review with a faculty member. So this could be Rory or myself. We also have a list of about another like 5 or 6 people that are faculty members at Humber that you can book time with to just to review your work. So this is sort of another chance to sort of, you know, at least the first meeting that you had with Rory and myself, it was a little bit more planning and strategy as to how you were going to sort of plot your stuff. This should be a check-in with actual visuals and start to look at some of your work and giving you some feedback on, hey, I think this project's working well. If it's your actual website you want to review, you can do that, or it could be more like the multi-page PDF. But essentially, this is just sort of another chance to get feedback on your work and how that's sort of coming together. And then this is one of those ones where once you meet with the faculty member, you only need to do one meeting. You're going to fill out the review form. You will fill it out with the feedback you heard, your next steps, and then you'll send that to the reviewer. They'll sign it and send it back to you, and then you submit the signed digital PDF to Blackboard. And that one's due March 24th as well. Okay, so then only digital submissions with proper e-signatures are accepted and no printed pieces. And don't think anyone's going to submit a printed piece anyway. But, okay, so those are sort of like your next 2 steps for the site or the course. The real goal, I would say, is now, you know, you hopefully the first part of the course was sort of organizing, planning, getting things organized, getting sort of some branding together, and, you know, getting the visuals of your first couple projects. Now it's okay. Let's actually, you need to make the website, right? So then you're sort of, you know, you're good when you have a web presence. All right. So I just want to double check, just follow up on this. We asked this previously, but that, you know, just may have changed.
Interested, since we just sort of plugged Webflow, I wonder if it'll, no, we do not receive kickbacks from Webflow either.
Yeah, we don't get anything.
We're not paid. Yeah, no, I do not represent Webflow or any of the other platforms.
This is more just for perspective to everybody to see what people are doing, right? So it's
yeah.
You know, and then one thing to note about Adobe Portfolio, when your Adobe subscription runs out, you lose your portfolio. I think I put that on the Blackboard website, but that's something I want to stress again. So that might be one of the reasons I would say maybe to not use Adobe Portfolio. Especially if you could get a free, it does sound like I'm plugging Webflow here, but especially if you get a free year of hosting with Webflow.
Yeah.
But
I actually ran into an example not long ago of someone, a friend, a former colleague who, went to his link, boom, gone, it was severed. So he sort of knew it and just left it there with Adobe.
No, you have to have a personal URL that's not a Behance.
Yeah, I can speak to like Behance. I know we've mentioned a few times, and there was a few people who had some interesting questions around that I tried to speak around. One of the examples I've got, I'll try to explain sort of how it can come in handy for sort of in between times or to have your work up in supplemental form, but.
Yeah, like Behance is okay for showcasing some of your work, but it doesn't really allow you to have sort of like a catered, fully customized experience, right? So that's sort of where having like your own website comes in, where you can set it up with an introduction, set up thumbnails, set up everything to be completely catered to exactly how you want to showcase and show off yourself. Okay. Exactly. Something like LinkedIn. No, I would not use LinkedIn for you can use LinkedIn for networking. I don't think LinkedIn would really be your portfolio, right? I think you want to have like a custom URL.
Yeah, definitely. I've had my work on LinkedIn at one point. It's very messy. Yeah. You can launch out right from your site, and it's sort of does it inelegantly, really. But as LinkedIn goes, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So so we just kind of wanted to walk through a couple of websites for you or with you, and just sort of high level sort of talk about and highlight some things that are working well or stuff to look at and to consider when you're making your sites. So Rory, you've either met or worked with a bunch of these people, right? So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I will let
This
you
is
talk this.
Jacqueline, yeah, Abernethy, and very modular, similar to mine, just all squares, all up front. And yeah, it's interesting her kind of quirks or whatever it is, or things that bother her about her portfolio. I was speaking to her just the other day. She wasn't her schedule didn't permit for her to speak for herself, but yeah, it's she's done something similar to myself and just pushed all the work there first. And she I thought to use her portfolio as an example is she's been working for just about, I think, most of her career, all of it. She's been working maybe a couple of years, a year or two longer than I have, and she's been at Shoppers Drug Mart for the whole time. She worked at a couple small little firms for a couple of years, and she's been there quite a long time. Not as a creative director. She's a senior lead in the team, loves her job, loves the team, all that stuff. And it's a great example. Her portfolio might be the only example I've seen really from people that I know, or even around almost anywhere, where she's got a really great breadth of work. As you can see, it's great. It's very visual. She loves fashion, all that stuff. She does a lot of photo shoots. She's doing a lot more of that lately, a lot more art directing as opposed to design. So what she's done, and I've seen her work change over the years. She had sort of more design pieces at the beginning. Now she starts off each piece with, and it's almost just about anything that you could be clicking on, where she pushes up some of the photography shoot aspects first. So she's evolved her portfolio pieces and how she goes through things once you get into the piece, rather than feeling like she's needed to gut her portfolio completely, rebuild it, and all that stuff. So she's just kind of reorchestrated stuff a little bit as she's as her career has evolved, and everything looks like some of these pieces are a few years old, and everything still looks pretty fresh and still looks pretty relevant. So yeah, she's just got one of those portfolios that's got a lot of range with one client, which is sort of rare.
Mhm.
It's very atypical for, let's say, my type of environment where people tend to work with a pile of different clients and many different places. So yeah, she's got a lot of breadth in there, despite the fact that she's stayed put in one place. And
Yeah.
she did mention that about why she even has a portfolio up. And and she thinks about it often. It's like, is it doing anything for me? She's not shopping it around. But exactly as I mentioned too, she's very organized and very a very well prepared person. And she said exactly that. If she ever needs to make a change, if she ever wishes to, or whatever, which it happens, even if you really love your job, she's completely all set for the most part. Despite her little grievances about what she'd love to update about it.
Mhm. Cool. All right. So let's look at Linus.
Yeah, and these are a couple of portfolios that I sent over as well to Rob. These were supplied. I haven't worked directly with these guys, but whom I received them from. This portfolio and a few others I worked with. So all senior designers and a pretty wide breadth of work. This guy's portfolio as well. He's sort of an art director, designer, and yeah, he's just done a great job, similar to just about all these really talented designers of just having a very wide variety. Like there's some illustration in here. He does a lot of illustration, animations and everything. You can see he's sort of yeah, exactly. He's got playable videos here as well, which are super cute. A lot of fun, actually. Really neat style. But yeah, he's made everything like available in on this one page. So that's one thing that was really, it's in all these portfolios that we've got here, and in this one in particular, where you don't really have to go too far and wide in order to see the work. So you can click on it. Like he's got GIFs in here that are moving. So he's done a great job to kind of have like a heck of a lot of variety in terms of just showing off how things are and how they look by using GIFs and videos and even static images all in one particular case study. And in doing that, he's allowed himself to not have very long-winded explanations. So you can see as Rob scrolls through here, it's all images here, and there's really, I don't think there's too much, like there's a little slug on the left-hand side describing just like one sentence of each portfolio piece. And he's done a great job where he obviously has figured out so that the visuals, for the most part, fill in those blanks for you. So you don't necessarily need too much of an explanation there to give you an idea of exactly what it is you're looking at. And he's explained too, he's got credits there as well, that, you know, with people that he's worked with, which is always a great idea. If there's group projects or anything like that that you guys work on, you know, putting down, you know, kind of what you worked on, what you didn't, and who you might have worked with, that's a great thing too.
Yeah, this is a great contrast too, because in terms of sometimes when you're like, well, I've got all this different stuff and I'm not really sure how it will display in my portfolio, I think it's a really good example of like a whole sort of bunch of different stuff, and it's really they've created a really strong template for how to organize it, right? And then I love how when you scroll down at the end of a project, you basically get back into thumbnail, so it just keeps you sort of in this infinite scroll, right? Where it's like, oh, that was a cool project, and then you get to the end, and rather than having to like go back or something like that, it's like, oh, okay, I can then jump right into the next project.
Such a nice feature, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
it's so
yeah. Very
it's
visual,
so
very.
so very cool. All right. Let me see. We've got a work in progress. Okay, so work in progress is password protected.
Yeah, it's got his password thing in there. Yeah.
That's okay. But that was sometimes people had questions like, how do I show stuff that maybe I don't want to be public facing? You can put it behind like a password protected thing, right? So you could always, if you want somebody to see it, you can always give them the password. But that would be an example of how we could do that. All right. Cool. What else we got here?
Yeah. Hello, Toronto. I haven't worked with her, but I've you know, heard her name. She's worked in similar environments and all that. Yeah, similar thing. It's again all visual, right? All these guys being like designer, art director / illustrators too. Some of them, you know, do a little bit of illustration. They've just got everything all up front here, and same kind of thing. She's got a little bit of a decent slug of a description of what each piece is, and just yeah, very wide visuals all the way down, and the breadcrumbs at the bottom of that are quite nice too, I found. Yeah, and in terms of the about section, I was going to mention the previous one. Like he had very little on there. It was very stark, right? And that was probably deliberate. You know, obviously, he's like, here's the work and let the work speak for itself. And definitely, you know, if you get to a certain point where you're doing just gorgeous, you know, stuff that just looks incredible, and you're very visual and done a pile of great work, then you can go ahead and kind of take that risk and do that. And see how it works. She's of course got kind of more of like a resume there, and for sure for designers and creatives that do win a whole pile of awards or work at places that you know, have very well-known you know, status and appeal and all that. Sometimes that's what you want to put there for the about, because that sort of says it all. So that's one thing that was sort of different from each one of these portfolios, is what they explain to it themselves in the about section.
Yeah.
Again, more squares. You're seeing a theme pop up here. The squares. The squares. Yeah.
But I think the focus is on the work, right? I think that's the other thing, right?
You know, exactly.
You know, that really either do like the intro or show us what you can do, right? We don't necessarily need anything. Don't make people have to think or work too hard to get to see all your stuff, right? And I think that's sometimes there's always a case when you're designing things, you want to make like, oh, it's my portfolio, it has to be the best thing ever, and you sometimes even overthink even like how stuff works, right? So I think, you know, when you look at some of these that are all really successful, right, they all do a really good job of just, you know, they showcase the work really well, right?
Yeah. Jacqueline was saying something interesting too about, you know, her wanting to perhaps rework stuff, and you know, being on the hiring end of stuff to, you know, helping the creative director where she works to, you know, to build the team over the years. She was saying most people that are doing the hiring sometimes are frazzled and they've got no time at all, and often when they're hiring, it's because there's this huge need. So she knows not to do that, sort of, that it's the work just needs to be there. So you know, usually when people are brought in, sometimes it's because things are going crazy and there's a project that needs someone to be on it. So it sort of facilitates that, you know, craziness if you've just got the work right up there and right up front into view.
Yeah, I've always found designing my portfolio to be one of the hardest things for me to design, because I'm always kind of like my worst enemy or my worst client. Where I find if I have a paying client, I can go to them and be like, here's some options. Which one do you want, right? Or which one, you know, and they're kind of like, okay, I like that one and that one, great. Where then with me, I'm like, well, I want to change my mind again. I changed my mind again. So
Yeah,
that's where
you
I would
need
say that,
to,
Rory and I are here as sounding board sometimes. If you're like, I'm really stuck, I need some, I just want to walk through stuff. Well, we can help you out with that. Okay. So if you're anything like me and you're constantly redesigning your own portfolio, I would say get somebody else involved who has good design feedback. So that'd be one of your peers. That could be faculty member, but just get them to sort of help you out to make some decisions.
yeah, extra set of eyes. It's amazing. It's one of those things where even for designers that, some I've worked with who just have an incredible eye, when you're close to something, right, you don't see the same stuff. I think it happens to everyone. You need that extra set of eyes.
Yeah, you become too close to something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this one's interesting. More squares spread apart a little bit more. So yeah, moving through these, it's some of them do change from that kind of larger modular setup. Yeah, this one definitely first off, and definitely more artsy and stuff like that, and kind of bespoke looking with the smaller squares up front. But interesting mix, like even displaying the way that she displays her work. Like she took photographs of her holding printed pieces. So this is an example of a change up to how things are even mocked up too, right? Like you guys will probably be questioning that, and might have examples of things that you photographed yourself rather than mocked up, which is great. So this is an example where this particular designer, had examples to be able to photograph, and supplied little quotes and stuff, on the bottom about, yeah. Totally different contrast, of course. I'm like, it won't pass AODA, but interesting nonetheless.
All right. So a couple other things, I think of the first couple ones that we looked at, right, where it was very much, it's right into the work, right? So then the last one we had, there was a little bit of sort of like an introduction of who you are, right? So I think as you're going through picking which one do you go with? Do you go with right to your work, or do you add in some sort of like a little introduction, right, as a chance to sort of really help set the viewer up for, here's what I do, right? So then when you start to look at my work, you sort of know what to evaluate. So this one's sort of a good, like they're a product designer, but they also add so much into this tiny little introduction, right? They design, sing, paint, write. They wear.
Is that me? No. Oh, did we lose Rob? We lost him. I thought that was me at my end. Unless I'm frozen too.
There we go. Sorry. So even if so say you have more like research-based things, or you have things like diagrams, even having things that are really well-designed diagrams or things like that can also work, or just how you organize stuff. Showing process, right? Like sticky notes. This tells a whole lot to people in terms of like how you work through things. So sketching, stuff like that. Excel.
Yeah, for some of the more UX projects, right? It's a different story, and this one was great. I mean, there's such a density to it sometimes, but yeah, it's all well organized.
And I think this is also, in terms of a lot of the time when you go and you look at like, what am I, if I was a customer and I'm looking to hire somebody, what am I buying from you, right? Am I buying sort of those end visuals, right? So if we look at the very first portfolio where it was very like fashion-y type thing, right? If I were to hire that individual, I'm going to expect this sort of really well thought out photo shoot, and like I'm focusing more on the end product. Where this person, when I look at this portfolio, I think, okay, I'm really paying for process, right? And I really am paying for the research as to figuring out what is it that I should be doing.
Yeah.
So those are other things that sort of the unsaid things that are sort of going on in your portfolio, right? And how you use your visuals to back up what you do.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, they should totally illustrate what your skills are. Yeah, really good point.
Right? Because like this is a great contrast to what we've been looking at, right? Where everything else has been very visual, and then this one has a lot more. This becomes a portfolio part, right? Where it's like showing me, okay, here's how I basically started to sketch out my idea for the app, right? And this is how I don't jump right to the end visuals. Okay, What's our next one? All right, so motion design, because I know this one ties in, I say a little bit more to MMDD, right? We've seen it actually with a couple previous ones, right? But being able to sort of show motion is always an important thing, right? So having sort of videos that you can click on and then they just work, right?
Two letters that you already know.
Right, so being super easy for me able to go and view all of your work. So if it's videos, embedding using YouTube or embed using Vimeo, right? That's sort of a really good thing, right? And then even just sort of once you've got the final video, still maybe picking out some key frames from the video that really start to show some of like your art direction. And I think, you know, I always prefer myself, if you're going to be a motion person and you want to sort of say that, yeah, I'm a motion designer, showing me motion, that's the best way of doing it, right? So having some animated things, and I think we saw that with the previous one, right, where the animations with some of the other stuff where it just sort of says everything it needs to say, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like happening in real time kind of thing, like right there. Yeah, there's a great mix there.
What else we got here? So this is an interesting one that I thought about, because what I wanted to sort of end on with this one is, so this is somebody that they're from Toronto. They're an interaction designer with 4 years experience. So they're not that far out of school, right? Or they're sort of like where, you know, you're in one space right now where you're graduating, you're kind of looking at securing your first job. But your portfolio is always going to keep evolving and changing, right? So this is an interesting one because she doesn't actually have her portfolio up to date. She had a portfolio at one point. She went and she got jobs and she secured jobs. And then now she's kind of like, I don't actually have any work up here right now. She's working at, where is it? She works at Jam 3, right? So she works for quite a successful, awesome agency in downtown Toronto. So that's sort of, I would say, you know, they're still sort of showing off some of like the credibility they have, right? But something to think about is your portfolio is always evolving and always changing, right? So as you kind of have like the portfolio that you graduate school with, and then as you keep working and you keep working through projects, you're going to keep updating and evaluating and sort of looking at what do you want to keep in your portfolio and what do you not want to have.
That's a great example of having like a web presence, right? Because sometimes, yeah, you're going to be waiting for more professional projects to come in. And just at her point, 4 years in, you might not, you know, have a bunch when you're a junior. You're not throwing, you know, sometimes all the great Hail Marys that look great in the end. So that's actually a perfect way of, like, she's got space to go ahead and build it, but, you know, she's described.
Yeah, so kind of when you're starting off, sometimes I think you might just have a variety of things that can sort of showcase your design skills. You don't necessarily know exactly what you want to do. I mean, I know when I came out of school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, right? So it was kind of those things that I had a portfolio that showcased a bunch of different things, but I didn't really know. But then as you keep working through, right, and as you're working with your stuff, this was sort of a nice little infographic I found, right? You know, are you proud of it? And is this more work of what you want to do, right? Those are sort of the things that you want to keep evaluating and looking at with your portfolio. You don't want to be doing, and you're not proud of it, don't put it in your portfolio, because people are going to hire you for what they see, right? So, and this might be one of those things that you're going to need a little bit of experience, but once you're, I don't know, maybe 6 months into a job, a year in, right? I think, you know, it's really your call. When's a good time to update your website? I think it depends on what you're doing, right? If you're finding that you're still trying to find, say, a full-time job and you're doing a lot of contract work, I would say you probably want to try and keep updating and having like personal projects that can help you move forward. If you're someone like myself, you end up like, I want to update my portfolio, but it's just on my to-do list and I never do it because I'm not actively looking for design work. So I don't know. Rory, how often do you update your portfolio?
Yeah, sort of what you mentioned right there, right? An as-is basis. Again, as you know, Jacqueline, my friend, mentioned too. It's funny. There's, I think it just, it becomes this sort of a nagging thing. I think even with portfolios that look great, you know, some of the great ones we looked at right there. I think they all nag at whoever's building them. So it's in terms of updating it, I think it's based on need. You know, really, and kind of assessing what that need is and making sure that you fulfill whatever the need is. So if, again, like what Jacqueline mentioned, you know, like she'd like to have something ready because she's a very organized individual and doesn't like to, you know, hustle to catch up, it's right there ready for, right? If she wants to make a move or whatever. And then for you guys, for, you know, getting your first, you know, your first gigs and all that stuff and out in the industry, it's sort of whatever you need it to be at the time. And then you can kind of maybe let it go and then assess that as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So like if I look at this infographic, I know with my first role that I had, I did all sorts of different stuff. I did things like I did anything down from like creating an instruction sheet to doing like, you know, marketing campaigns to web design, stuff like that. I did all these different things. And as I kind of went through that, I sort of had this chance, I think a couple of years in, to start to look at things and really start thinking, okay, what am I actually enjoy doing and what do I hate doing? And that's sort of, I think, as I kept then refining my portfolio and figuring out, you know, when I left the company to do my own thing, I then had kind of a portfolio. Okay, here's how I'm reinventing myself on the web with here's what the new Rob kind of looks like, and here's what the new Rob does for work. So I think, you know, going back to Rajvir's question, you can always update, you can always change, and I think it really depends on sort of going through this, right? If you're looking at your portfolio and you're kind of like, well, I'm not really proud of any of my work, then I think that's a good opportunity to maybe go through, hey, well, how can you start to make some work that you're more proud of? Or is it work that you want to do more work of, right? If it's so I know a big thing for me when I was getting out of school is I didn't necessarily, I wanted to do more web-based coding type things, but I didn't have that necessarily in my portfolio. So that was always a way of how do I figure that out? And that was doing a lot of sort of marketing myself in terms of meeting with clients and finding people that needed like small websites done, and getting them to sort of take the chance on me to do that, right? So it was you know, it was going back to the whole networking thing, I guess, right? And marketing yourself.
Yeah, it's a great point about you know, what you put in your portfolio is kind of the work that you're going to get. So for sure, like not just utility, but what you're mentioning, Rob, like where you want to direct yourself and what you'd like to have, you know, come at you and stuff. Yeah, it's a marketing tool.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the, like if you go back in the portfolios that we showed today, right, like you expect different types of work from all of those individuals, right? And it's, you know, if there was, say, you know, I wanted to go and conduct, say, like user research, I would go to one of the people versus somebody else if I wanted like motion design. And this is, as you keep evolving and you keep sort of like looking at your portfolio, think about that as sort of like your best sort of foot forward to really go and help sort of sell yourself for what you can do and how you can grow and change, right? And you don't, I think the other thing too is you can easily change and update what's on your portfolio, right? So you can always reinvent yourself if you want to or needs be. So, okay, so are there any questions? Oh, that's already answered. Sorry. You mentioned the last announcement that we're going to be doing coding. Do we have to create our own code website for a portfolio? Use LinkedIn or other websites? So I think I've mentioned this before. You can use like Webflow. You can use any Wix. You can use anything to make your portfolio look its best.
Except LinkedIn.
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah. But it has to be, but you want to have like a custom URL to your website. Right, so it needs to be like your name.design or your name.ca or whatever. But you can, what you use to sort of implement it is your choice. Any other questions? How much should we include in your portfolio in terms of work? I think like 3 to 5 is fine, right? I think going back to the idea of quality over quantity, right? You don't need to overload me with stuff. If I see, like I know that there are individuals where they've had 3 solid pieces and they've gotten hired, right? So it doesn't have to be a lot, right? Just ensure that you're really showing the best stuff you can do, because I know when I review a portfolio, I'm gonna probably look at the weakest thing that somebody's done and I'm like, okay, what happened there? You know, if I see really good, and then something that's not so good, I'm like, okay, what happened there? Am I gonna get that? So
that's a great point. Yeah, it's those weak things in my own portfolio as well. It's they stand out over time. Even you'll notice in your own portfolio as you get, you know, more great work in there and all that, and you'll see the range. It's incredible how the weakest links just sort of stand out.
also, if your portfolio is showing that you involved in some sort of chemistry workshop.
Oh yeah, the art show. Yeah.
Yeah, we got the Humber Galleries.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way of,
Yep.
getting stuff in your portfolio.
Yeah, they can totally apply to this sort of stuff.
Yeah. 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 Joining things like Adobe Max. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great way of, again, competitions and stuff and challenges. Yeah. Yeah. Building work. And there's so many out there. There's tons of them.
Any other questions? No. Okay. So then just in terms of logistics moving forward, has anyone asked to show more work on the interview? Yeah, you could. I mean, I think if they want to see more work, that's probably a good sign, right? If they're like, hey, I want to.
Yeah.
So you can always go and get other projects, right, to keep a conversation going. I think those tend to be a little bit more catered towards where you are with your thing, or so it's kind of a hard one to know.
Yeah.
But definitely, if
I've had that
somebody's
happen myself.
Sorry.
Yeah, I've had that happen myself actually recently. It's yeah, it can get you. It's and you can even be surprised by it. And like you mentioned, Rob, it can happen for a bunch of different reasons. Usually, if for sure if they're interested, and they just like to see more of a specific type of work. But it could be in a certain discipline. So it could be that the work that you're showing that you do have is fantastic and shows everything perfect for just about everything. And there might be a certain discipline of work or type of work or projects that they've got going on there, and they just need to see another proof point. But then for me, it was digital when I was trying to grow that skill. Yeah.
So then the question is, and what if you don't have any?
If you don't have any, yeah, exactly. The lesson is try to have any. It's
You
yeah,
can
this
always
is a
go and
great
create
lesson.
projects. If it's
Sorry.
something where somebody's like, hey, like if it's a field where you want to keep exploring and it's stuff you want to do, right? You could always create a project, right, and
Yeah.
make a project for yourself as a little design sprint or something like that. Or if you're just like, it might, depending on how the conversation goes with a potential employer, it's like, no, you don't. That's all you have in your portfolio as of right now, right? Because
Yeah.
I think the other thing that they have to that people should understand is that you're applying for like an entry level job, right? So it's
Exactly.
not, you're not going to have like some of the portfolios we've been looking at where they've got like 30.
Actually, one great last point to that is the best thing lesson for that is research. The times when this sort of bit me, where I had all my work out there, and perhaps there was one or two evidence pieces that I may not have had as ready as I wanted to. I was always, every single time, just thinking, God, okay, yeah, I should, knowing a little bit more of what that particular team was handling in the now. And both of the times that I can actually pull up in my mind, there was a knowledge gap at my end, and I was a little bit lazy and I didn't do my research, assuming that this particular team wasn't involved in a certain type of work, and they were. So you can very easily get around that by just knowing as much as you can about whom it is sometimes that you're presenting your portfolio to, especially for the sake of a job where you're serious about it. And chances are, if you've really done your research, your work, and answered it in your work, you might not run into that kind of a situation.
So there's a good question about like what would be like an entry level salary. I'm going to point you towards this, which I think is a useful thing. This is the creative earners. So the RGD, they basically go and they survey a whole bunch of people, and they sort of break down like what people make, what's their job title, where they live. This is a good point of reference to sort of go and have a look and see. Generally, I would say is normally when you're starting off, you normally will feel that you're getting a little bit underpaid for your services, just because if you don't have much experience, people aren't going to, they're sort of taking a chance on you, so to speak. But what that also gives you the opportunity to do is, what I found is a lot of people, when they start off working in a very short amount of time, can really increase your salary pretty quickly, right? So within a couple of years, you can, almost double your salary. I think based on some conversations I've had with some previous students in the previous years, and I think around like $50,000 is normally what I've been hearing for some entry level jobs. But it's one of those things where if you get in somewhere and you really sort of showcase your value and your worth, you should be able to get to a point where you can sort of, negotiate with them as to like, hey, look at all of what I do.
Freezing up. Is it just Rob?
Keep falling out here. My internet must be.
Yeah, I don't. Oh, it's you. Yeah, I keep thinking it's me. I'm trying to check.
No, it's me. It's me. I think I got.
Okay, it's you.
I think I got to move somewhere. But
because I moved, so I'm thinking, God, am I in a horrible spot here?
Okay, so then just in terms of like some of your upcoming live sessions, right? So in week 11, we're gonna get Bianca, who's now working at HelloFresh Canada, and Graham, who was a previous GDES student who was at Humber, who I actually taught Graham. So I met Graham in his first semester at Humber, and Bianca hired Graham, and he's doing quite well. So I think what I wanted to get them is to sort of get some different perspectives as to listen to Bianca, because it was sort of an interesting one as to how, even though wherever you are in your career, still the idea of networking and you can always change careers and things like that, but then also might be a little bit more applicable to all of you is somebody like Graham, who graduated and he's been doing a lot of freelance work, and based on his networking with with the faculty members at Humber, he was able to secure a full-time I don't know if he's full-time yet, but I think he's been able to secure a job at HelloFresh, and from what I gather, it's going quite well there, and they love him. So, so I thought it'd be good to bring them in and get some perspective and get you to ask some questions and stuff like that. So, and then the final class, will sort of be a little send-off, but I haven't told Rory this, but if you have this, Rory, what I tend to do is I will just share some of the stuff that I did when I was in school, so you can have a look at what did I graduate with, because obviously we've been giving you a lot of feedback on your own work, but sometimes it's also interesting to see sort of like what we did and what we had as well. So everybody starts off somewhere, and then I know when I look back at my school portfolio after about like 3 or 4 years, I was just like shaking my head and like, oh, it was so bad.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
All right. So, are there any? Whoops! I've reached the end of the presentation. Are there any other questions? So Rory and I will go, and we're going to update all the grades just so everybody's clear as to sort of like what's the most up-to-date stuff. And that's more of a sign to if there's like a 0 or something like that, it gives you the opportunity like and a trigger to like, okay, this is what I need to update, because remember you have to get a 100% in all 8 assignments in the course. So if you're an MMDD, by week 10 is when you're officially given time during the semester to start. You can always start later. It really is, from my experience with this, is it's not like everybody starts at the exact same date. And that's kind of why we put it at the end of the semester in the last 5 weeks. Some people have already started, but generally it's one of those things where there's some flexibility, and that's a conversation I would say probably to have with Christy. Or I don't know I'm not sure who the individual is for GDES right now, but reach out to your placements advisor. I think it still might be Christy, just to sort of discuss that. And keep checking like the Career Connect and the job portal, because I know that that's sort of where, we've sort of tried to, anything that sort of comes in, we try and all sort of funnel it to the same spot, right? So any opportunities that are coming in where people are looking to hire Humber students, we all send them to the same spot.
Career Connect.
Hold a sec. I'm gonna have to Google it.
Yeah, I think I had that up. I did not bookmark that when I was looking at that the other week. Maybe I did. I doubt I did. Quick check as well.
So this is something that normally, this is something that should be covered in your field placement stuff, right? In your prep course. But if you connect to the careerconnect.humber.ca, and you should sign up for that as a student, and you can then start to view any of the job postings that go up. And actually, I think Christy actually sent me a message today that I think, based on the individuals, at least in the MMDD program, that have field placements, I think she was saying something like 40% of them came through Career Connect. Yeah, so 40% of the student work placements that have been secured so far in the MMDD came through the Career Connect Humber Connect portal, right? So there's
Good resource.
There's lots of stuff that's there for you. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Trying to remember what I don't know if we had. Yeah, ours is very wild. Our placements. That's great. It's a good resource. It's awesome.
Career Connect. I believe so. I would double check with Christy. And the reason why I sometimes say that is that a lot of there's the field placements. There's an entire department that is dedicated to field placements and stuff like that, right? So they really are the final say on all that stuff, right? Obviously, so. Okay, well, I hope all of you have a good rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
4:30.
Turn off
Good,
the
good,
recorder.
good. You're welcome. You're welcome.